Times leader Todd Griffin and Ty Englebright in studio this morning to talk about everything sports. It's the Sideline Report on your hometown radio station, WPKY, The Tiger. Uh-oh, Todd, it's 9:06. Good morning. We're 3 minutes late.
We're a little bit late, but, breaking news as we come on the air as I'm awaiting a phone call, thinking I could be the next head football coach at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, boy, that would be awesome, man. Can I be your assistant?
Oh, sure. I figure we're both on the line someplace. What are they down to, about their 100th choice now?
I think so. I saw a picture of Kim Jong-un in a Tennessee shirt on Facebook. I think but he looked pretty good in it.
Yeah, but he turned them down. That was the.
Got a little rattle in your mind. Get rid of it there. Talk.
That might just be me.
I don't think so. I don't like it. Switch to that one over there.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
That's better. Yeah.
All right, how about now?
That's perfect.
Good.
I'm going to get that one out of your way. I can see you now, too.
That's not the first time I broke a mic.
I don't know. It's a little ornery. But, yeah, so, hey, big week to start out. We kicked off hoop season out at Caldwell County.
Oh, yeah, it's basketball season, a big doubleheader. You started with Caldwell County and Lyon County. It doesn't get much bigger around here than that. And, of course, a split, so both sides get to go home a little happy anyway.
Yeah, and I think the girls were very competitive. They were right into it, just some breaks and some different things, didn't go their way. But, hey, I like the way they played. They were spunky. They gave some good effort, and they'll bounce back and do all right.
Yeah, you definitely had to like the way they competed, and for 3.5 quarters, it looked like they had a chance to pull that game out. But I think the inexperience and the youth showed late. Lyon County scored the last 8 points of the game to win 40-37. And I think the difference there is Lyon County has a couple of kids who are pretty good, have played for a long time, and those kids kind of took over the game. Allison Murphy and Hannah Holloman, they kind of took it over the last 3 or 4 minutes, and Caldwell County is still looking for someone to say, hey, the game's on the line, give me the basketball.
Step up.
I'm going to take care of the ball. I'm going to make sure we run our offense. I'm going to make sure we get a good shot, and that's just something that didn't happen for the Lady Tigers down the stretch, and it's something that, you learn from, and hopefully you build on that and don't let it happen again in the future.
Right, and it's always, out of the block, first game of the season, there's still some tweaking.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of tweaking that'll go on until your season down into late January and into February. But, hey, they were entertaining games to watch, and I encourage folks to check out these basketball teams this season.
Well, the girls did a lot of good things in their game. At times, the game was ugly, but I think that's going to happen just about any time you have a season opener because, you just haven't had that experience out there and everybody hasn't played together quite as much yet. But I remember talking last year with Coach Melissa Thomas. Last year's team was great at running its offense. It was great at getting good shots. It didn't always make those shots.
Yeah.
You kind of put in a tough situation if you're a coach and your team executes on offense, gets a shot, but misses it, and does that again 3 or 4 times. Well, your team's doing everything you're asking of it, except you don't have any points to show for it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of those things that I hate to oversimplify the situation, but sometimes basketball comes back to putting the orange ball through the orange hoop.
No doubt about it. Through the peach basket, I
yes.
guess they call it sometimes. But, yeah, but it was, I thought they played hard, and it's going to be a fun season for all of us, I think, to watch these teams mature and develop as the season progresses.
But I think you could say that about, all 4 teams on Tuesday night. I thought all 4 teams competed. I thought they had some young kids come in and give some good minutes. Again, it was ugly at times, and, everyone failed to execute at times, but at other times it was competitive. People were going for the basketball. I mean, it wasn't like anybody was out there not giving the effort. It's just some things need to be cleaned up for everyone involved. And, again, that's why the basketball season is 3 or 4 months long,
right.
So you'll have a chance to work on those things and be better by the time, the end of the year tournaments roll around in February.
Yeah, and what a way to start the season with that, the rivalry that
the
Lions and the Tigers have together. So it's just fun, and I know that the Lyon County folks had a great crowd up there as well, and we're friendly communities back and forth. It's a good, fun rivalry, but yet a lot of folks, we cross, county lines and have friends and relatives, and it's just a festive activity atmosphere when they get together.
Well, in some ways, we're almost one county. I always call it Lionwell County. So,
Oh boy.
So when somebody from Lyon County does well, we kind of take a little credit for that.
Sure.
Ty Rogers was
Exactly.
honorary Caldwell County, and Cullen Brown is the same way.
Sure.
And I think when somebody from Caldwell County does well, I think Emma Talley is probably an honorary Lyon County, and so it's we kind of sharing the success of some of those athletes and some of the good things that happen.
A lot of good folks down there. But yeah, looking forward to this basketball season, and of course, Friday night they're playing again. The boys are in Hopkinsville, and our Lady Tigers here gets Christian County, tough Christian County team here at the Tech Cab, and of course they've got a tough matchup over there in Hopkinsville as well.
Yeah, both teams with tough matches coming up Friday. That Hopkinsville team is having a little trouble getting some kids eligible, so that's hurting them a little bit, but they went into the year ranked 8th in the state in the Courier-Journal preseason poll, so they've got other kids. They're still going to be really good. Christian County's girls, I think, were in the top 20 in the state in the Courier-Journal girls basketball poll, so again, a couple of big games coming up, and the Tigers getting off to that good start the other night with a 64-50 win over Lyon County, which I think Lyon County will end up being a pretty good team.
Oh, yeah.
They're like everybody else, it seems like, at least in our area. They've got a couple of really nice players, and then they're trying to fill in with some kids that are sophomores and freshmen, and it's just hard for those kids. They're not going to hit the ground running when the season starts.
Exactly.
It's going to be 3 or 4 months before they start to be, where you want them to be at the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, it's kind of like playing music. You sit there and practice with your guitar, solo all you want to, but when you give it the group, your timing's off if you don't practice with the group, and it's sort of the same way, I think, especially with basketball.
And I think both Lyon County teams are in action again Friday night. I believe the boys host McLean County, and the girls, I believe, go to Dawson Springs. So everybody's playing again Friday night.
Oh yeah, and it's get out and see these kids play. It's a great time of year to get out and enjoy some good high school athletics.
Well, we had a good vocal crowd Tuesday night for the Caldwell Lyon doubleheader, and in all honesty, I think Caldwell and Lyon, the rivalry has lost a little something since Caldwell County was moved, kicking and screaming from the 5th district to the 7th district.
Yeah.
But it's good to see that teams are still trying to keep the rivalry alive. Caldwell and Lyon have opened the basketball season for several years running now. Caldwell and Lyon baseball always try to play early in the season and then again late in the season. So trying to keep that going, but it doesn't quite have the same ring or the same tone to it now that you're not out there competing for that same district championship. When it comes postseason, Lyon County is still in the 5th district competing with those teams, and Caldwell County is still trying to build some rivalries over in the 7th district with Madisonville and Hopkins County Central and Dawson Springs.
Yeah. And it does. I mean, when we were in school, it was that good old 5th district, and it just took a little bit away from it. But as you say, they are working to build those rivalries with those other teams. It just, when things are a certain way for a long period of time, and those rivalries and some of those great matchups from years past, you remember those.
The games you remember are the ones from the district tournament,
exactly.
Or in the championship.
Oh yeah.
Those games were just incredible battles, and everybody knows everyone. And when you get moved over to the other district, Caldwell County is the only non-Hopkins County school in that district, so we've played all those teams forever, but it's just not the same. And Madisonville and Hopkins County Central have the in-city rivalry kind of going on over around Madisonville, and Dawson Springs kind of is trying to always be the team that spoils the season for those two teams, and then Caldwell County is just kind of the other team. But I think Caldwell County has actually had enough success in some sports since being moved over there that Caldwell County is kind of a bit of a rivalry now. And I think in baseball, Caldwell and Madisonville are a rivalry.
Oh, big time, yeah.
In basketball, it's been Caldwell and Hopkins Central that has kind of emerged as the rivalry. So it's just kind of interesting to see how those things shake out.
It is. And what are your thoughts on both our teams? Let's get. I mean, I know we can talk about Lyon County too, but just as far as I was hearing some things about the boys team as far as the play of Darian Boyd and some of those folks. I mean, how do you feel like just about the opening game that they looked? Of course, Jameer was just coming back from football, I guess. So,
I thought defensively the Tigers looked pretty good. Again, Gabe Board and Max Wadlington are both really good players for Lyon County.
Exactly.
And Wadlington got his. I think he had 20 points and maybe 11 rebounds. And Gabe had 11 points and 7 or 8 rebounds and 4 or 5 assists. But the Tigers really didn't let anybody else get going very much. And Jameer Riley on Gabe Board was a really fun matchup to watch.
Right.
You know, I think defensively, if the Tigers can play like that, they can hang with a lot of teams. But when you start looking at the very top of the region and you look at Christian County and University Heights and Hopkinsville, it's just going to be really tough to compete with those teams. I mean, there's a reason the 8th District has won the second region championship now, whatever it is, 15, 16 years running, back to 2001.
You're right.
Well, they just have incredible athletes over there. And
they just keep rotating them in and
sometimes
out.
they kind of move around among the schools, you know, from Christian County to Hopkinsville to UHA. But there's just so many of them, and just really good basketball teams. And you know, if I had to guess, I would say the second region champion will probably come out of the 8th District again this season.
Yeah. What about the ladies? I know Lions Allison Murphy was very active on the court. I mean, she's and then of course some of our players. You know, we had some fairly good. I was here back at the station and just trying to listen, but I thought Coach Bush was still trying to figure out who was going to play what positions, but we got some good play from some underclassmen.
Yeah, and they're going to have that play because there's only one senior on the team, one junior.
That's right.
So you quickly get into your sophomores and freshmen at that point. And again, that goes back to what we were saying earlier about, you know, the game kind of getting away the last 4 minutes. Well,
it's that experience.
If you haven't been in that situation before, it's easy to kind of lose your head and you start, you know, trying to force a pass that you don't need to force because, you know, if you've got a 5-point lead and there's 4 minutes to go, you're dictating the game at that point.
Exactly.
Take your time, run your offense. If you don't get a good shot, just keep running the offense. Let the clock work for you.
Exactly.
I mean, it's your game at that point, but you still have to execute. You know, if you make a bad pass or commit a turnover or take a bad shot, well, now you're getting out of where the game's not in your hands anymore. You're kind of giving it back to the other team, and that happened a little bit the other night with the Lady Tigers. And again, Lyon County had those players who were able to say, "Give me the basketball. I'm going to go get some points," and that was the difference the last 4 minutes.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's always fun when those teams get together, and a fun night out the cab. I think the ESPN crew was on site.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah, and that's been going on now, I think, for several years, or it's been resurrected. I've seen that before, I think, but that was pretty cool to see the crazies and all that, the student section having a good time with it.
It's good to see the students there. It was good to see a good crowd.
Yeah.
Now, I'm still old school. I remember when a Caldwell Lion game would draw a packed house, and it didn't matter what either team's record was. You know, one team could be 20-2, and the other could be 2-20, and there would still be a packed house. So it's still unusual for me, at least, to see a few empty seats out there. But it was a good crowd. It was a vocal crowd. Both sides had students there, and they were into the game. I mean, it was just a fun atmosphere.
Yeah, it is. So going to be a fun season, and we're looking forward to covering it here at the Tiger, and I know you are as well, and your Times leader. Great write-up in yesterday's paper, and get that if you get a chance to. And Todd's got a great summary of both games in there and some great photos, and it'll be like that all season long.
I hope so. Yeah. That's the game plan.
All right.
Do have some news on the basketball front as far as the Hoops Classic. Not sure if you saw this. This just happened last night officially. I think Charlotte Basketball Academy had to back out of the Hoops Classic here the 28th and 29th. But Cy-Fair Learning Center in Houston is going to take their place.
Wow.
I think we'll just punch them into those 2 open spots. I haven't seen the schedule for sure, but I think that's what will happen. So one of those will be Aspire Academy playing Cy-Fair Learning Center from Houston.
Wow. Do we know anything about Cy-Fair Learning Academy?
I don't know much. I was able to pull up a roster last night and just take a quick look at it. I know they have one kid that's 7'2".
Oh, wow.
Another kid that's 6'11", and one that's 6'10". So I don't know where these schools find these kids, but apparently if you're 6'10", 6'11", or 7 feet tall, there's an academy out there for you to play basketball.
They're going to have just the door frames out there at Caldwell County High School, and these guys show up.
Oh, these guys will definitely have to duck when they come in the gym. The Cy-Fair Learning Center in Houston, though, I think is part of the Grind Session, which I think Aspire Academy is also in, and St. Louis Academy, I think, is also in that. So it's going to be some great
Displays
basketball
some
between
great
those.
talent and
Yeah,
some-
I mean,
yeah.
just some kids and some height and some basketball talent we don't usually get to see come through Caldwell County. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
It will be, and like I said, we've talked about it now for several weeks. Just school break with right after Christmas, it'll just be. It's fun to have basketball on during the day and have it going on. There's something I always love the NCAA tournament time. When it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you got 3 or 4 games going. It's just something festive about it. It just kind of makes the day have a different feel.
Oh, yeah.
Cool
the best part of the NCAA tournament is the first 2 rounds.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, that is the tournament. Everything
tournament.
after that's just kind of, usually the Cinderellas get weeded out after the first 2 rounds, and it's just the big boys battling it out after that. But those first 2 rounds, I mean, for the smaller schools especially, that is the NCAA championship.
Exactly.
They're not going to win 6 games more than likely.
Nope.
But, hey, if you're that small school and you see Duke or Kentucky or Louisville or Kansas, hey, you got that shot in that first round, and that's the fun part of it.
That's exactly right. And, that's kind of the way I think these holiday tournaments are. We're coming off Christmas, and we've had all that. We've opened all the presents. We've eaten all the food. And now, man, it's just let's go see some hoops.
Oh, yeah.
And some good hoops.
7 games each day, I think.
Yeah.
So starting at 11 o'clock each morning and then going right on through the evening. And Caldwell County will have teams in several of those games. But I think the games that are going to draw people, especially the people, not from here or just the casual basketball fans, are going to be these games between Aspire and some of those other academies, because those just figure to be really good games.
Yeah.
And you're going to see guys that are going to be playing in college.
Exactly. And there'll be, like I said, people in from out of town, eyeballing these guys.
Oh, yeah.
No telling who you might see at the gym checking it out.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another cool thing, too.
And it's a big fundraiser for Caldwell County, for the athletic program and for the basketball teams. And just a chance. We talk about all the other, the Hoops Fest at Marshall County and all these other things. But, this is kind of our thing. It's at Caldwell County. You don't have to go any place or travel. You can just stay at home, go out to the gym, hang out for the day, and see some really good basketball action. And it's funny because it seems like every time there's an opening, another really good team comes in.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too. So that speaks volumes in my mind to when we have, we've had, Christian County, I think, decided to play another tournament, and that worked out better. For them.
They went to Sykeston.
They went to Sykeston, and then we lost this other team. But there's somebody, ready to step in and take their place. So it speaks volume about where this tournament has, is
really
up and
quickly
coming.
too.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Charlotte Basketball Academy wanted to come. They actually wanted to originally come. And my understanding was that there just wasn't room for them at that time.
Right.
Well, a spot opened up, and Charlotte, I believe, thought they could get out of another contract and then come here instead. But I think they ended up not being able to get out of that contract, so they were had to back out this time. Maybe they could make it again in the future.
We might see them sometime.
But
yeah.
able to pick up another team and just plug them in. And,
That's
again,
awesome.
it just really good basketball coming up here.
And that's the 28th and 29th of December. And you can check out Todd. Usually he'll run a schedule, I know, several times in the paper, and you'll see the times and who will be playing as we get closer to it. So.
And as I've mentioned before, I'm just tickled to have that local, event. And the girls are going to play 3 times. Caldwell's girls will play 3 times over 2 days. Caldwell's boys will play twice. And so it's a chance to get out and support the home teams and get to see these other teams. I mean, it's just usually there's about 15 minutes between games, so there's very little downtime. I mean, it's a basketball game. One ends. They warm up real quickly, announce the starters, and boom, here's another one. So there's only, I think, an hour and a half between games on the schedule, so they have to keep it
rolling.
moving.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, there's not much downtime. You just play one game and then get the next one out there and let's go.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking so forward to it. And thanks to everybody that gets that together. I know Tori Hammond and a score of folks works on, the Caldwell County Athletics. They all work very hard into coordinating, get this, and what's becoming, like you said, it's becoming a really nice event.
And a ton of sponsors for that.
Exactly.
I'm sure you could still sponsor it if you want to contact Tori and get in on that. So just a big deal, and hopefully it just becomes bigger and better.
No doubt about it. And just plan on heading out and supporting this tournament. It's going to be great.
All right. What about some football? You up for some football talking
Man,
this morning?
it's surprised. For the past several weeks when we started this, we always led with football. Well, we've switched our basketball mode, but we knew there'd be football news.
Well, the main thing we're waiting on this week, football-wise, is the bowl bids. Those won't be officially announced until Sunday. And, of course, there's a lot going on Saturday with the conference championship games that
could affect those bowls.
We have to see what happens there because does the SEC or the Big Ten get one team in the playoffs, the championship playoffs? Do they get two teams?
Mm-hmm.
Once you get a second team in that Final Four, it kind of bumps up everybody behind you in the pecking order for the bowls.
Right.
So right now, there's a lot of projections out there. Of course, my favorite projection has been the one that has Purdue and Kentucky in the Music City Bowl.
That's intriguing.
And that was one I was kind of pointing to for the last couple of weeks, but that's hardly finalized at this point. It's fun from a Colwell County standpoint because you have Elijah Sindelar at Purdue. You have Kentucky, which, a lot of people around here are Kentucky fans,
and
the Music City Bowl is in Nashville, so that's a good chance to go see them. Right now, though, after watching Kentucky's defense the last couple of weeks, I think Elijah would probably throw for about 500 yards on Kentucky. So
he might.
I'm not sure if you're a UK fan, you want to pull for that matchup too much or not. But at this point, Kentucky has to fix some things on defense and try to get geared back up for whatever bowl they play in. But trying to do some research last night online just on the Purdue bowls and see where they might be headed. The Pinstripe Bowl in New York City has been mentioned as a destination for them.
How long has that thing been going on?
Not very long.
I think so.
I think they played that at a Yankee Stadium.
Really?
So that could be interesting.
That makes sense, Pinstripes, yeah.
So that'd be a good trip. I would think actually a trip to New York City would probably be a little more enticing than a trip to Nashville. I mean, although we love Nashville, but I think if you were just picking bowls, that the only problem there is that Louisville has also been projected by some to end up in the Pinstripe Bowl, and Louisville and Purdue played in the season opener, so they're probably not going to have a rematch. They try to avoid those when they get to the bowls, so that could affect that bowl. I've also seen Purdue mentioned for the Foster Farms Bowl in Santa Clara. I think that's played in the 49ers' new stadium out there. That would be interesting because the projections there would have Purdue playing Washington State. And, that's our old buddy Leach and, throwing the ball all over the yard. And that would be a fun game because Purdue's gotten to where they're putting the ball in the air a little bit more with Elijah. And as their wide receivers come along, that could be a fun ball game. So if I'm Purdue and I'm looking at, a trip to New York City, a trip to California, or a trip to Nashville, I'm probably pulling for the Pinstripe Bowl or the Foster Farms Bowl.
Foster Farms, I saw some of those early, after Purdue had beaten Indiana last weekend. I started seeing these, I saw your tweet and I saw other, what if, CBS and the other bowl predictions out there. But that's intriguing. It would be interesting to see. But I think you're right. I think that UK would be, the way Purdue is playing and the way Kentucky is playing. I tell you, I think Kentucky would be in trouble.
You've got two teams that at least appear to be headed in opposite directions right now. Purdue's coming on at the end of the season, and Kentucky is kind of struggling. Of course, Louisville is really good offensively, and they have the guy that I'm not really sure why he's not the front runner for the Heisman again, and Lamar Jackson. But not really the way you want to see Kentucky end the year if you're a Kentucky fan, because the defense for UK was just absolutely non-existent in that game. And I think if you go back and look at the season and you're a Kentucky football fan, you look at the Wildcat season, you can understand the loss to Louisville. Louisville's a really good football program. They have a really good team. Again, a guy that should be right there in the Heisman talk.
Right.
So there's no shame in that. There is some shame in never, ever getting the other team to punt. But, we could argue that all day. I think if you look at the Georgia game, no shame in losing that game.
Right.
Georgia's beaten a lot of people.
They have.
The Mississippi State game, I think that was a bad matchup for UK. I don't think most Kentucky fans are going to be too upset over the loss. I mean, the way they lost, yes, again, kind of getting blown out in that game. But I think for a lot of UK fans, it goes back to the Ole Miss game and the Florida game. I think a lot of UK fans jumped the ship with that Florida loss, and not because they lost, but because they got beat because twice they didn't even bother to cover anybody.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there thinking, okay, Kentucky is a Division I Southeastern Conference football school, and they don't have a defensive coordinator who can get his team lined up not once, but twice, and you give up 2 touchdowns, and you end up losing a 1-point game when you basically just gifted the other team 14 points. I think a lot of UK fans still haven't gotten over that game. And the Ole Miss game, I expected that game to be back and forth, expected it to be real close. Ole Miss made a play at the end. A great catch on that touchdown in the corner with just seconds to go. I'm not sure what else you can do on that play. You know, maybe not let them get in that situation, but the corner on that play had really good coverage. He's right there. The kid just went up, made a play, got his foot down. That happens. So you can understand that, but I think the season turned for a lot of UK fans with that Florida game, and because Kentucky has lost to them back, you know, a million years, I think.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
So everyone was so fired up that, hey,
people,
we're going to end that string, and then you have the chance. Kentucky, I think most people would agree, was the better team that night, except for those 2 plays where they couldn't get lined up on defense. Nobody had the wherewithal to go, maybe we should take a timeout before they throw a touchdown to an uncovered receiver, and you get beat, again, what was it, 28-27, and you just gave the other team, you know, pitch and catch touchdowns because you didn't cover the receiver.
Yeah, those hurt, and I think you're probably right when you're talking, and it's frustrating. It's got to be. I'm not a Kentucky fan. I'd say I'm not a fan. Of course, I pull for them some, and I just don't keep up with it. But you know, it's got to be frustrating.
Well, you go back to last season, and the team was 7-5 during the regular season, but they punctuated that with a win over Louisville at the end. So it looked like Kentucky's headed in the right direction at that point. You know, they're coming along. They've had a good year. 7-5 against a schedule. You know, typically the SEC is pretty tough. You get the win over Louisville to go 7-5. They lost the bowl game, but at that point the bowl game's kind of gravy because Kentucky hadn't been to a bowl game in several years. And then this year, you look at the same record, 7-5, but it's not the same season. This season the SEC was down somewhat. Kentucky caught South Carolina and Missouri early in the year before they really got going.
Right.
Now, those 2 teams made those wins look better as the year went along, but you wonder if Kentucky had played those 2 teams late if they had gotten those wins.
Result, yeah.
So you look at the 7-5 this year. Last year you expected 5-7 and got 7-5, so it's, you know, a great year. This year the season was set up for Kentucky to win 8 or 9 games, and they struggle to the finish line at 7-5. It's not the same 7-5.
No. It just seems like there's just some inconsistencies there that just never seem to get. There's never a fine oiled machine. You know, they'll have streaks of greatness, then they'll look horrible.
Well, and you look at the defense, and nobody expects Kentucky to have Alabama's defense or Georgia's defense or the number 1 ranked defense in the nation.
Right.
But you can't go out there and just, again, be non-existent. Louisville had the football 8 times last week. They scored 5 touchdowns and 3 field goals. You know, their poor punter never got up off the bench.
Yeah.
I think he read a book during the game. I'm not sure what.
And you're not going to win games.
No,
with
you can't.
Those kind of series.
And giving up 44 points.
Yeah.
Louisville was going to get theirs. They were going to score 30 or 35 points, whatever. They're just that good offensively.
Yeah.
But if you're Kentucky and you try to control the ball a little more on offense and get a few stops on defense, you can compete. But the things that get me, you know, I sometimes don't understand the UK game plan in a lot of respects, because to me, going into that game against Louisville, it looks like it's a game that if Kentucky gets the ball, you're going to be run heavy. You've got Benny Snell, who led the Southeastern Conference in rushing during the regular season back there. On Kentucky's first series, they go 3 and out, and they throw the ball twice.
Yeah.
And they gave it to Benny once. I'm like, no, you've got to give the ball to him. You've got to.
I saw your tweet during the game.
You know, eat up time, use the ground game to control the clock, control the contest, and keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands.
Yeah.
And you come out and throw the ball twice, and I'm like, I don't understand that at all.
Right. I know.
I mean, what are you thinking? And, establish the run game, which is what they have been doing, and then you can do some things off the play action to maybe throw the ball later in the game. But I thought it was just bad game planning. I don't have any idea what the defense is doing. My goal in life is to one day be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to accomplish absolutely nothing. And that's what it appears UK gets out of its defensive coordinator at this point.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there'll be some, there'll be some evaluations.
Well, they've already said they're bringing back the defensive coordinator next year. So, to me, the best defense Kentucky has had is when Mark Stoops just basically took over the defense and ran it himself. I mean, he was a really good defensive guy at Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so baffling is when he was hired, Kentucky fans were basically promised, a stout defense and an air raid offense. Well, we don't have an air raid offense. We don't have any defense.
Yeah.
And it's 5 years in. What happened to those promises?
And I don't see, and it must be different at that level, how you can be on the field, you could be going through a game plan throughout the week, and the head coach really, it seems like when things are going bad, you'd have to take over the game or do something different.
Well, when you're watching a game and it just becomes a complete mess, especially on defense, Kentucky offensively had some chances to do some things against Louisville and kind of shot themselves in the foot a few times. But you wonder, what does the team do in practice all week?
Right.
Again, granted, I think Kentucky is a little weak up front on defense, and when you're weak up front on defense, it makes everything else look bad. Because you need your defensive line, and I'm not going to sit and say I'm a defensive genius or anything, because I'm not. But you need your defensive line to really eat up those offensive linemen, make them have to block you with a couple of guys so that your linebackers can then come up and make tackles. It's the same thing in high school,
Exactly.
When you start about looking at tackles and things like that, well, your defensive linemen are never going to be your top tacklers, because their job is to eat up the blocks. It's the linebackers who are going to make the majority of the tackles, because that's their job.
That's their job.
The defensive linemen are keeping offensive linemen off of those guys so they can make tackles.
Yeah.
Well, if you're weak up front, it's really difficult to be very good defensively. And Kentucky, really good defensive linemen are probably the hardest guys to get. There's just not a lot of them out there. So when you're recruiting, that's the tough position to recruit. I think you can find receivers, you can find running backs, you can find linebackers, but those really good defensive linemen are really tough to find, and I think that's the difference between a good team and the great teams. Is great teams have really good defensive lines.
I think you make a good point there, because the ones that are really good, they're looking at the Alabamas. The Alabamas, the big ACC, your Clemsons, your those kind of teams.
Oh,
all
yeah.
Your other SEC powerhouses and those kind of stuff, and maybe even your schools out west. But I don't know. And it seems like you've got a certain corridor part of the country in the South, from Florida to Texas, where these guys are eating different things and becoming these defensive line monsters.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, so I don't know. It's just it's a tough road to hoe, I think, for some programs, especially like Kentucky, because here you are in the SEC, and there's all these premier SEC schools that each and every year are these powerhouses, and it's hard to get players to come there.
Well, the farther south you go, I think the more players you have available. There's a greater talent pool.
Yeah.
If you're in Mississippi or Georgia or Florida,
Texas,
they have a little greater area to pick from, or more people to pick from.
Yeah.
And again, you go back to the defensive line thing. That's just really tough for UK to recruit. I think they've done a really good job of recruiting.
Oh, yeah.
They've had several top 25 classes just in a row.
Yes.
But you just wonder when that's going to pay off with more wins. And the toughest thing is, you can have the number 22 ranked recruiting class in the nation, but when you start looking at the top 25, that puts you about 8th or 9th in the SEC. So even when you have these recruiting classes, you're still behind a lot of the Southeastern Conference in talent, and the only way to make up that difference is to coach up your kids better And so
Right.
far, Kentucky has not proven it can coach up its kids better.
Yeah, and you've got to execute on the field.
Oh, yeah.
It's just all there is to it. You've got to get it done out there. But like you said, to leave in the Florida game, just toss some
Yeah,
touchdowns.
that's
playing
not
catch
anything about
touchdown.
talent. That's
No,
just getting your
exactly.
defense lined up.
And that's
and,
coaching.
And you could say, well, a player made a mistake or a player ran off that shouldn't have. Those are the things you should have worked on in practice. I mean, that goes back to position coaches and the defensive coordinator. That's just something that shouldn't happen. And if you look out there, anybody on the coaching staff, and see a guy wide open, might be time to use a timeout and make sure everybody's lined up. I mean,
Maybe.
sometimes you want to save those, and yes, I agree, you shouldn't just waste them. I don't think it's wasting a timeout to call a timeout when you see a guy uncovered and it's just going to be a simple pitch and catch for a touchdown in a close game.
Right.
Well, we kind of got sidetracked there a little bit, but
No,
know,
it's easy to do. But
and I'm always great for a UK football rant.
Oh,
so
you are, man. I appreciate that about you. Let me ask you something, and this might be fake news, but is there any truth that I see a rumor about Brom being recruited to Tennessee? Or them trying to get him?
Well, it was one of those great internet tales, where it was a done deal and they were finalizing it. And
things, yeah.
It was a done deal yesterday morning.
Mm-hmm.
By last night, it had all fallen apart. So the done deal was no deal.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, Tennessee is going after just about everybody. I think Brom would be great at Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
The rumor was that they actually had a deal in place and that Brom had accepted it, and that when the UT athletic director went to the school president, he nixed it for some reason or nixed some part of it. Well, then Brom backed out, when the deal changed.
I mean, what's going on out there? I mean, I've never seen a coaching search like what's going on down there. You had the Greg Schiano deal.
Oh, yeah, and the fans revolted before he even got
and that was
introduced.
a done deal, and I think he's even has maybe some legal aspects.
Oh, yeah, he wants some money because there was an agreement in place,
there's
apparently.
A memorandum of understanding, I think. So, man, it's getting crazy. I mean, do they know what they're doing down there?
Well, and I think the Jeff Brom thing could still be in play because I think at some point, if you're Tennessee, I think maybe you look at Bobby Petrino.
Yeah.
And I've thought all along that Jeff Brom, even when he was at Western Kentucky, was waiting to get back to that Louisville job after Petrino left.
Yeah.
Well, if Petrino were to go to Tennessee,
that opens it up.
It opens it up, and then Brom might end up back at Louisville.
Wow.
So he could still be in play. If you're a Purdue fan, he could still be on the way out at some point, but it doesn't look like he's going to Tennessee. Of course, at this point, Tennessee fans in football are as bad as Kentucky fans in basketball. And, one thing that would be great to debate at some point is who the next basketball coach at the University of Kentucky should be. I mean, I don't think Cal is going anywhere anytime soon, but eventually he's going to step down. Who's that guy going to be? I don't know that I see anybody out there right now that I would want. Well, I think Tennessee football fans find themselves in the same situation. They have this head coaching job that's open. They want Nick Saban. Well, Nick Saban's okay where he's at. He's not leaving Alabama for Tennessee. At this point, I don't know.
Do you think if their pocketbooks were big enough, would he do it?
I don't know at this point. I think Alabama could always pay Saban more than anybody else could at this point to be their football coach.
I think you're probably right.
And you know what? These good football coaches are probably worth the $7, $8, $9, $10 million a year because those football programs make so much money that you can. John Calipari is probably worth what UK pays him. I think he's the highest paid state employee in Kentucky.
I think that's right.
And he's probably worth it.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary to think that somebody's worth that kind of money, but when you look at the programs they lead and the amount of money those programs make for the university and for those athletic departments, it's kind of like a CEO of anything. I think they're probably worth that kind of money if they run the program correctly and have success. And I think those guys, do have success. Now,
no doubt.
If you pay somebody $5 or $6 million a year and they don't get the job done, then it's time to look someplace else. But if you're Tennessee, I'm not sure they can hire anybody at this point that's going to make the fan base happy.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
I don't see it. I mean, maybe if Belichick wanted to leave the Patriots, I just don't see it.
Oh, that's a good one.
And there's probably some really good up and coming coaches out there, but I think Tennessee is a place where they don't think they should have an up and coming coach. They should be able to get an established coach.
Right.
Again, like UK basketball. I don't think Kentucky basketball is ever like, yeah, let's give this guy a try. No, you need to have a proven commodity for that position. Again, for Tennessee, I'm not sure. I think they could probably pay about as much as anybody else for that position, but who is it? To me, I think Tennessee made a mistake years ago when they let David Cutcliffe get away. Yeah. Cutcliffe is at Duke now and has had some good success there. He was a Tennessee guy, and I think a lot of volunteer fans want a Tennessee guy.
Yeah.
You know, I think, to me, the best scenario I could think of, and I'm not really a Tennessee fan, but if you brought in David...
I'm pretty impressed.
David Cutcliffe.
Yeah.
And if you had him because I think he's 64, 65 years old, so he's not going to be in it for the long term. Bring him in as the head coach now. Bring in T. Martin as his assistant head coach.
Let him mentor him and get him prepared.
And then let T. Martin be the next guy in 3 or 4 years when Cutcliffe finally decides, I'm done with it. Turn it over to T. Martin. He's a UT guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's an up-and-coming coach. Maybe that would appease the fan base. But
that's interesting.
At this point, and it's really tough when you let all those names get out there that, well, we've talked to this guy, we've talked to that guy.
Florida hit it quick.
Yeah,
Dan Mullen.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, they just bang, and I think that fits Florida.
Because now whoever Tennessee hires is going to be their 12th or 13th choice, and everybody knows that. Even the guy coming in knows he was way down the list.
Down the list.
Yeah, so it's kind of tough to rally the fan base with this exciting new hire when you had 12 people turn you down.
Unless it is one of those that's like, oh my gosh, how they do that?
Oh yeah,
that could still happen, but I don't know. We're about 10 minutes away from 10 o'clock, and man, where does it go? As we always talk about.
Well, and we were talking about the bowl games.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get back to that a
let's
little
do
bit.
That.
I've thought all along that Kentucky was headed to the Music City Bowl. Even before the Louisville game, I thought win or lose, that's where they were going to end up. That Purdue game is still intriguing. The more I think about it, the more I think maybe that's not going to happen. We're not going to see Purdue and Kentucky in the Music City Bowl. Kentucky could still end up in the Liberty Bowl. Still see some projections for them to go to the Belk Bowl in North Carolina.
Is that in Charlotte?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think probably South Carolina or somebody like that will end up in that because when the SEC starts sending teams to bowls, and I think the way they pick the bowl teams now is a little different than it used to be. The bowls used to actually have a pecking order where they would pick. I think the Southeastern Conference and most conferences at this point just take all their bowl-eligible teams and place them in the place that would be the best fit so that you don't end up with Kentucky in the Music City Bowl 3 straight years like has happened before, or anybody in any bowl, 2 or 3 years running, try to spread it out and make it a little different for everybody. So I think the Belk Bowl will end up with somebody a lot closer to home, like a South Carolina or somebody.
Do you see Kentucky going north anywhere to one of these bowls or anything
No, not really. I think it's the Music City Bowl, and if it's not the Music City Bowl, it's the Liberty Bowl.
So somewhere in Tennessee.
I don't think Kentucky's going to fall any farther down the bowl list than the Liberty Bowl. I don't think they're going any higher than the Music City Bowl.
We used to do the Outback Bowl some in Tampa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was that was always a fun trip.
Last year was the Tax Slayer Bowl in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Against Georgia Tech, which was a really good game.
Yeah.
There's been some things out there that say Kentucky and Texas and the Liberty Bowl, but again, none of that's going to be finalized until we see what happens this week because
this weekend,
you have to get the 4 playoff teams first, and the SEC could still get 2 teams into that if in the right scenario.
Let's talk about that. Just of course, there's lots to be ironed out this weekend, but with the championship games, the conference championships. But what are you thinking off the top of your head?
It's going to be tough.
You have
you're looking at Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia as Kentucky or the Southeastern Conference is 3 teams to get into that playoff. I think Alabama still has a really good argument. The only downside to that is they didn't make the SEC championship game. That's Auburn and Georgia.
Yeah,
if Auburn wins the SEC championship, they're obviously a lock to go to the playoffs.
Yeah. What about Clemson? They still in there?
I think Clemson could still.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it really closely.
Yeah.
Everything I look at tends to come from the viewpoint of the Southeastern Conference. So.
Oh yeah, yeah, and but honestly, I mean, you know, when you're talking four,
Yeah.
you know, and you see Georgia, Alabama, Auburn. I mean, Auburn was very convincing in my mind that they deserve to be there after what they did this past. I mean, they're a good football
Clemson
team.
should be in.
Yeah.
Ohio State has an argument.
I mean, sure they do.
But they also have a 31-point loss, I believe, on their resume. So it's kind of hard to.
And who out west? Did they say was it UCLA? They think.
I'm not sure about those, but
I don't know.
Yeah,
I was even seeing scenarios where maybe I don't know.
that's why we've got to wait until we see what happens
Yeah.
in the championship game, the conference championships.
Yeah, that's a big
know,
deal.
People want to say, well, we need to expand the playoffs. Well, the conference championship games are kind of
The
an
playoffs,
expansion of the
exactly,
playoffs at this
exactly.
point, because I think if Auburn loses the SEC championship, I don't think they can make the Final Four.
Yeah.
If Georgia wins, does Georgia jump into the Final Four? If Georgia wins, does Alabama have a chance to get back into that Final Four? It's really going to be tough. I mean, a lot has to happen, but I really think Alabama could still sneak back in. And it's weird because by not playing in the championship, you don't have the possibility of another loss. So Alabama's just got that one loss sitting there when everything shakes out.
What keeps Alabama out? Definitely.
I think if Auburn wins and gets in, I don't know. It's really tough. I mean, if Georgia wins, there's so many scenarios. And, back in the day when they used the computers to pick all this, it really would be crazy.
Now it's a committee.
Yeah, now it's a committee, so I don't know if Alabama is going to have that much of an argument or not once they lost to Auburn, because you can say, well, you not only didn't win your conference, you didn't win your division.
And I think they were sound. I mean, to me, Auburn was the better football team.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they spanked them.
But if you're talking top 4 teams in the country, I would almost have to put Alabama still on that list. But will the committee – I think if you're the committee, you probably don't want to put multiple teams from the same conference into the Final Four.
And I think that.
Because it came down to an all-SEC championship one year. And, of course, for everybody in the SEC, that was great. But I don't think that was necessarily great for college football as a whole. It probably wasn't good for viewership. I think they will try to avoid that if they can.
But when the majority of the quality football teams are in a conference, I mean, what do you do?
Again, when you start talking, if you're looking at 7 or 8 teams for 4 positions, I definitely think Auburn's in there. I think Georgia's in the conversation. I think Alabama's in the conversation.
Yeah.
How do you determine?
Yeah, I mean,
who's the better of those teams?
And there are some. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. It really is.
But it's like anything. It's like people say, well, we should have 8 playoff teams. Well, there's always going to be team number 9 that thinks they should be in there, or team number 10 that thinks they should be in there. It's like the basketball tournament. When there were 64 teams, there was always 3 or 4 teams that felt like they should be in.
And now we got them.
They went to 68.
Yeah.
Now there's 69, 70, 71 that, hey, if number 67's in there, we should be in there. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. However many teams you have, there's always somebody that has a legitimate complaint, a gripe that, hey, we should have been in there instead of Team X.
And it's going to come down to dollar bills at some point too.
Oh yeah.
So that when it's all said and done.
Well, and you look at the NCAA tournament, and the committee says, we don't think about matchups. Well, they obviously do.
Sure.
I mean, you're always going to see a Kentucky in the same bracket with a North Carolina or a Duke or a Kansas or a Louisville somewhere. They're setting up those matchups.
Sure.
I mean, they can say they don't, but they do. And you can play with the seeds a little bit to make some things happen, and it makes for great TV. I mean,
it does.
They're not going to turn that down. That they make money, and there's a lot of people with a lot of high-paying jobs, and they like to keep those. It's almost like politics,
just about. Well, that's cool. Yeah, and it'll be a fun weekend of college football. Can't wait. It's going to be fun.
And there's still a chance Western Kentucky might make a bowl at 6-6. I think they're going to be right on the borderline, and I'll admit I haven't researched this as much as maybe I should have, but there's at least one projection out there on ESPN that has them in the Auto Nation Cure Bowl in Orlando against Georgia State.
Auto Nation Cure Bowl.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one either. But
where do they come up with this? I mean, I know they get new sponsors every
Yeah,
year.
not-
But what happened to the Tangerine Bowl and the orange? You know, what
the
I'm
Blue
saying?
Bonnet Bowl,
The Blue Bonnet Bowl. I mean, why not?
the Holiday Bowl,
The
that used to be the
Holiday
big
Bowl,
thing.
yeah.
You know, BYU was in the Holiday Bowl every year,
Yeah, man.
and you could always count on that game to be first team to 50.
And they always had a gunslinger.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, BYU always had a gunslinger.
And Louisville's going to get a bowl someplace. Again, a lot of people say the Pinstripe Bowl, which is why Purdue probably can't or won't go there.
Right.
I think the Courier-Journal this week said their prediction was the Tax Slayer Bowl. And, again, that was the bowl Kentucky was in last year. A lot of people
That's
are
in Jacksonville.
a lot of people projecting the Sun Bowl or the Belk Bowl for Louisville. So, again, when you look at every team and there's projections out there for 3 or 4 different bowls, we just have to wait until Sunday or at least maybe Saturday night. Some things will start slipping out, which is, again, another reason to be on Twitter or whatever, because a lot of times you see things first, although, you know, the whole Jeff Brom to Tennessee done deal thing didn't work out so well on Twitter, but that happens sometimes too.
Yeah, and that's kind of the nature of the world we live in now with social media and people running on rumors and not verifying and it just, you know, the information's just out there so quick.
Well, and sometimes you can just throw something out there, which, you know, is what I did originally with the whole Purdue-Kentucky thing in the Music City Bowl. One projection had Purdue in the Music City Bowl against South Carolina or somebody, and another projection had Kentucky and, you know,
Right.
Iowa in the Music City Bowl. And I was like, wait a minute, what if we combine the two?
Exactly.
And then the next thing you're like, well, somebody said Purdue and Kentucky in the Music City Bowl. And I was like, well, that was me.
Hey, that's right, and you did. Yeah.
I mean, I had no inside information other than just, you know.
Hey, how about this matchup? And it is.
And it's still a possibility, but
it is, and it's intriguing, and I think it'd be great.
But I think Purdue probably, you know, don't want to speak for them, but I think they would probably like the Pinstripe Bowl and a chance to go to New York City.
Sure.
I think Louisville would probably like that bowl because a chance to take, again, your last year's Heisman winner and a contender this year, at least he should be, a chance to go play in New York City.
Yeah.
So I think those teams probably look at that as a little bit bigger situation for them than maybe the Music City Bowl is.
Yeah. Hey, we've got high school championship this weekend as well, don't we?
Yeah.
At the bag, as you call it.
Yeah, the grocery bag.
Yeah, at the grocery bag. So
Commonwealth Stadium.
Yeah. And,
Kroger Field.
Yep, they'll start Friday and Saturday, and then I think Louisville the 6A's play on Sunday. Looks like according to the schedule. So,
Yeah, they have that spread out a little bit more than they used to, but
you know, Mayfield.
perhaps
Franklin
one day
Simpson.
we'll be back in that. I always hold out hope.
Yeah, Mayfield and Franklin Simpson, kind of from our area, the 2A and the 4A schools. They'll be going for it.
Yeah, they'll be carrying the banner for far western
West
Kentucky
yeah.
anyway. So I always pull for those teams. Again, you want to see teams around here do well, and we've played Franklin Simpson just a few years ago and had some success against them.
We went down there and really showed them, you know, took care of business.
Played Mayfield. Again, I think if you look over the last 8 or 9, 10 years, Caldwell County has had as much success against Mayfield as anybody else has.
Yes.
I mean, hasn't been a whole lot, but, you know, when you look back over that time and you see 3 Caldwell wins over Mayfield and another game or two that could have, should have gone our way.
Yes.
There aren't a whole lot of teams that can say they had that kind of success.
Not
So,
at all.
again, it was a big football season, great fall sports season, and got basketball going on now. And then before you know it, it'll be springtime. The weather this week has almost been springtime. So
Something else, hasn't it?
It's been awesome. Hopefully that'll keep up and everybody has a great chance to go out and watch basketball games. And before you know it, it'll be baseball and softball. And
wow.
the sports season just never ends.
It doesn't. It's all year round, but that's the way we like it. I mean, even in the summertime, there's something to cover. I know you do that. I want to mention the Elks Hoop Shoot, too. Jeffrey Barr was in yesterday.
Oh,
And,
really? Yeah.
To tell us about that. I see you have it in the paper. That is on December when is it?
16th.
16th, yeah. And the registration begins at 8. It's for boys and girls, 8 to 13. It starts at 9. And then Blake Bard, was it last year or maybe the year before? Almost made it.
Yeah,
the
did
whole
really
way.
well. Yeah.
So that's.
I think that was last year.
I think that was. So Elks Hoop Shoot.
And it doesn't cost anything.
No, that's exactly right. So give them a plug and hope that many kids as possible, 8 to 13, boys and girls alike, head on out there and participate in that on the 16th.
Well, again, this week we didn't get to all my notes, and we were going to do some other things, and
we
ran out of time.
If we run over, we all right. We can run over just for a few minutes. What else you got?
Well, do we want to talk about our favorite concerts? Do you have your list?
I've got a list. Go ahead.
Well, we can,
however you want to do it.
We can hold it for a week if you want to, but
whatever you want to do. It's your show, man.
Let's hold it a week.
Okay.
I'll give you a chance to research.
My dates.
I've got mine. It was tough to come up with. I think I'm going to call an audible though, and instead of a top 5, I've got like a number 1 and a number 5. And then I've got a 3-way tie for second. That's going to be what I've got.
Yeah, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 listed at number 5 right now. So I won't do that to you.
I didn't think about doing that, but I did have several that I was just, my mind was boggled that I couldn't get them on my top 5 someplace because I enjoyed them so much. So maybe I can do that. Maybe I can have a 5-way tie for fifth, and it'll end up being a top 10 list.
When you're old guys like us, we've got a few concerts under our belts too.
A few.
So, well, some of them it's hard to remember, but
I didn't think it was right to list all 6 Kiss concerts I've been to in my top 10, but
man, I guarantee.
I think it's 6.
You've got a few up there.
I had to. Yeah, that sounds right.
You've got to have at least one of those in your top 10.
Oh yeah, one of them is there definitely,
5,
but.
Yeah.
The ones with the original members always stand out the most.
Oh, yeah.
But they always put on a good show. It's a good show. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter who's in the band because it does, but they always put on a good show regardless.
It's kind of cool that you talk about, we're talking about our favorite concerts, but a lot of these concerts we've seen where they play sports.
Oh, yeah. Bridgestone Arena has been, or Freedom Hall.
Or I saw the Police at Churchill Downs.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a cool place to see a concert.
I saw the Eagles at Rupp Arena.
Yeah. So, yeah. So hey.
So we're just going to the same place.
What we're talking about.
We just show up and either a ball game happens or a concert's going on and we're good.
They work
either
out
way.
Perfect together. That's exactly right. So I'm looking forward to this, and I'm going to put on. I will think a little bit harder about. What I want to put in my top 5 is pretty tough. You've made by limiting it to 5, you've made it pretty tough.
I had that problem as well. I got my top 4. Well, my number 1 and my 3-way tie for second done pretty quickly.
Okay.
But that number 5, even last night I was thinking about changing it and putting something else in there. But by this time next week it might have changed. So.
Well, I didn't want to put my Slim Whitman concert down. But I got to rank that one up there. But stay tuned for that next week. We'll have a good time with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have Gordon Lightfoot on my list.
And that's a legitimate one you've seen.
Yes, but it's close.
Yeah,
it's close. He was really good.
Oh, I just know.
I don't know that I've ever been to a concert where I thought, man, that was bad. Have you ever been to a concert you thought was just bad?
No, I mean I've seen
some are better than others.
I've seen a few opening acts that have had like stuff thrown at them, but I didn't think it was bad. I was just into it. But no, I mean it's just always fun.
And I had a few other sports notes.
Let's go through them.
Baseball. Giancarlo Stanton. Is he going to end up in St. Louis?
St. Louis?
Potentially, he could end up in St. Louis, and Bryce Harper could end up in Chicago with the Cubs.
Yeah.
What would the NL Central look like next year if that happened?
Wow, yeah, that's tough.
So,
yeah,
I think the Cardinals have a shot at Stanton. I don't think he's their first choice. I think the Cardinals are the first choice for the Miami Marlins to deal with because the Cardinals have room for some money. They have a big TV contract coming up. I think that's going to be worth over $1 billion. That's crazy money.
That's unbelievable.
So they're going to have an influx of money available. The Cardinals have done a pretty good job the last few years of moving people and clearing up some salary space. So if anybody out there can handle Stanton's enormous contract, the Cardinals could. The Cardinals also have a lot of people at Memphis, a lot of prospects to trade. That's why the Marlins really want to make the trade with St. Louis because of those prospects. They're going back to a rebuilding mode again. They're trying to move all their big contracts. And I think the Marlins would prefer to trade with St. Louis because of that. It's just a matter of can they get the deal done and, will Stanton finally waive his no-trade clause and say, yes, I'll go to St. Louis. Bryce Harper in Chicago with the Cubs. Wow.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
So a lot to look out for there, but the NL Central could be crazy next year. And one other note, Tiger Woods back at it today in the Hero World Challenge. I think he tees off about 11:05 our time. Can Tiger Woods still compete? That'll be the big question.
Yeah, and I've seen different little reports about him changing his game, being a little bit different kind of golfer. He's had to, with some of the physical ailments that he's had. But I hear from just the reports I've read that his mind's in a good spot. And we all know golf; it's a mental game.
Oh yeah,
and
95%.
He might not be that guy that just goes up there and grunts and rips it the way he did. And just it's because his back just can't take it the way he did it, and his knees. The way I think part of is his problems were just how his body just he just unbelievably way he uncorked it. But,
well, I think part of his problems go back to changing his swing.
Yeah.
And I never really understood that because, first of all, I thought he had just a great natural swing and natural feel for the game and probably had one of the greatest short games ever in the history of golf. But what happened was when he first started, he was so much better than everybody else and hitting the ball so much farther that he intimidated a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Well, as the younger kids came up behind him, they were hitting the ball just as far, and they had played in so many big tournaments as youngsters that intimidation factor was no longer there. And I think Tiger probably tried to change his game to match theirs, and he should have just kept playing his game. I think he changed his swing so much to try to get every ounce of power out of his swing. I think that's where he ended up getting hurt.
That's an interesting perspective. I've never kind of put it that way, but yeah, that makes total sense. But I've never thought of it that way.
And I think it's been 4 years since he's won an event and 9 years since he's won a major. I don't know if he can get back to that.
He's not going to catch the bear.
It doesn't look like it.
I don't think he's going to catch the bear. But I love the bear. So the bear to me is golf.
But
and Arnie.
It's good for golf to have Tiger out there.
It is.
Because, golf has been slipping the last 5-10 years, and I think it's been because Tiger hasn't been out there and hasn't been competing. A lot of people love Tiger. Some people didn't like Tiger.
Right.
But whether you liked him or you didn't like him.
You like to see him on the course.
You watched him.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And that's the big deal with professional sports is getting people to watch, whether it's live or TV or whatever. And without Tiger, it just hasn't been the same. A lot of great golfers out there, a lot of guys I like watching, but it was different when everybody was chasing Tiger, and then you was trying to see Tiger compete with the new guys, and that dynamic has been missing from golf. So I hope Tiger can get back to where he can at least challenge, in some of these tournaments.
I think so. Yeah, we wish him well.
It's going to be tough, though.
It will be. It will be because the game evolves so much, and the styles and these guys that are coming out. So, but we'll see. But we're going to wrap it up here. We're about 10 after, and I tell you, it's always fun. And we would encourage you to pick up Wednesday's edition of the Times Leader. Check out Todd's write-up, all kinds of good stuff about the game. Of course, we didn't the 9U Tigers. They're down at the bottom. They went 2-1 at the Kentucky Cup.
That's a couple of weeks ago, but yes, pretty good showing.
Yeah, had a pretty good showing, and our junior pro teams, kind of pretty much wrapped up the season. So follow our basketball teams all throughout the season with the Times Leader, and of course here on WPKY and on our Sideline Report, and of course you've got a Wednesday and a Saturday edition as well.
And we did get to most of my notes thanks to the extra time you gave us today.
Yeah.
But I did not have in my notes 20-minute rant on UK football. That just kind of happened. So that might be why we ran long.
We'll temper you, but we'll have to see after these bowl games. We'll have more to talk about, I'm sure, next week about the bowl matchup that they get.
Well, yeah, we'll know where everybody's going by that point.
So we'll have a big football show.
Probably Saturday night we'll start seeing some of that stuff slip out a little bit. Then Sunday they will announce the playoff teams and where everyone's going.
Watch your Twitter feeds if you Twitter, and of course tune into the Sideline Report every Thursday right here on your hometown radio station, WPKY. It's brought to you by the Times Leader. Todd Griffin, editor of the Times Leader, in studio every Thursday at 9:03. We appreciate you joining us. And, of course, tomorrow night right here on WPKY The Tiger, we will have girls basketball right here. And Eric Jacobs and Dennis Stevens will have the call for you on that. We'll be on there shortly before the varsity action only is what we'll have tomorrow night from the cab. So I think they'll probably be around 7:15. We should be on the air for that. So, Todd, anything else?
I think that's it. Just girls at home Friday, guys at Hopkinsville, and hopefully we'll have some updates on Twitter as well. If we're at one game or the other, so you can keep up with both teams Friday night.
There you have it. Well, thanks for joining us today here on the Sideline Report with Todd Griffin, brought to you by the Times Leader. I'm Ty Englebright. It is 10:10. We hope you have a wonderful Thursday, and tune in next week at 9:03 for the Sideline Report here on your hometown radio station, WPKY The Tiger. Have a good day, everybody.
Caldwell Medical Center Sleep Lab offers diagnosis for a variety of sleep problems, including sleep apnea. 1 in every 5 Americans have significant sleep difficulties, which, when diagnosed properly, can be successfully treated.